Hello everybody, Hank Klein here from HK Digital Reviews, and I'm here today with a review of the Thank You Scientist album, Terraformer. Now before I get into it, you might notice there's a little bit of a change already. Due to some feedback I've gotten, I have decided to have the horizontal layout instead of the vertical layout for these videos. And the reason why I didn't have this before is because I tested it and I found that with an iPad it looked very awkward. However, I was able to find a way to make it so that everything looked right and not totally messed up. And now I think I can do these reviews and record them like this from now on. So, good thing. Good thing I figured that out. Anyways, back to the album here. Thank You Scientists is a progressive rock band from New Jersey who's been around for about 10 years or so, and this is the third album they released. Now, not only are they progressive rock, but they decided to incorporate a few other genres of music that are blatantly obvious in their music, and I mean that in a good way, such as jazz fusion, which means that there's just so many instruments on here that just blow your mind. The trombones on here, the saxophones on here, you know, the cello, the violin, all this stuff that you'd find jazz fusions on here. Then you have math rock, which makes an appearance multiple times in their music, and also progressive metal. And not only do they fuse this together really well, they also like to strip each other away from each other, and usually have parts of their song just relating to one part. Like you will have points on this album, like on the track Swarm, where it's just straight progressive metal. Then you'll have times on here where it gets to the point of just being straight funky, slash groovy, slash I guess chilling if you want to say it like that, with just straight jazz fusion, just straight jazz music that for the most part they nail on this record and in their past records as well. And then you'll get progressive rock, and then you'll get the technicality of math rock, especially with the drums. The drums on this definitely has the technical aspect that math rock has. And there's just so much going on with this music. And that's one thing I admired from Thank You Scientists when I heard them before this. They just were always interesting. They kept things fresh sounding with all these different instruments on the album. But when you have so many things going on in a particular song, when half of that gets stripped away, there's a tendency that the music you're making is going to sound dull, which does actually happen a few times on this album. To start off with the song Bird Watching, it's like a 3 minute long song. Um, it's a much calmer song, but it's not done in a way that makes you necessarily feel anything towards it. It doesn't really give you any type of emotion, to be honest with you. It's just like a 3 minute piece that just again your senses are already overloaded by the amount of instrumentation that's going on in the music beforehand, that this just seems like a dull moment that ends up hurting this album's likability because it just doesn't feel like it fits. And it also happens with the song Geronimo on here, where it still has those things. Now don't get me wrong, it still has the horns and stuff like that in the song, but they don't make a striking appearance as they do on other songs on here. They just kind of mellow in the background and don't really do anything. They just kind of go with the flow with what the guitars are doing or what the drums are doing and not sticking out, which, again, on this album is a no-no because it just makes the album flow really weird. And it's not to say that they couldn't make a slower song that strips away some of that, but they'd have to make the song sound really good still. And they did end up doing that with some of those tracks. So I guess if we're going to keep with the negatives on this album, there were a few tracks on here that were long-winded, very long-winded, which I guess I kind of had to expect because this was an 84-minute long album, almost an hour and a half. I mean, and most of the songs on here are at least 7 minutes in length, because there's also, I think, 2 interludes as well that are like a minute and some change, and that's about it. So you have a lot of 7 to 9 minute tracks on here, and that which makes sense for progressive music. That I knew that probably was going to be the case, and their music beforehand also had tracks that were 7+ minutes in length. But the problem is that after a while, you just kind of get somewhat annoyed, somewhat like uninterested with what's going on if they're not keeping your ear interested. And it's kind of amazing to me that songs that have so much going on to them feel like nothing sometimes. And I guess really to go with that, we have the song Anchor, which is, I believe, probably my least favorite song on this album. It's just honestly, in a way, kind of a mess for about 7 plus minutes. And I just, looking back at it and trying to think about listening to it, it's just, it's just very uneventful for it. But even with everything going on, it just sounds like nothing is happening. You just kind of feel like you're listening to instruments doing their thing, but you're not getting a feeling of happiness or joy or sadness or anything like that from it. You're just kind of listening to it, and it's just not doing anything for you. It's it is the epitome of just making you feel in a way numb. So kind of how to put it that way, but that's really what it does. And it's not the only song that does that. Song of Serpent, or Song of a Serpent. Let me just fix that. Is another track on here that just kind of falters by the way of just being too long, being too uninteresting, and just kind of just falling on the wayside. Song that you can just easily forget about and move on with your life. And the final track, which is also the title track, Terraformer, again, is just long-winded. It doesn't really do anything for me. It just kind of like, it goes, it has its cool moments, but when you have a song as long as it is, it doesn't do enough. It just doesn't, in the end, do enough for me to think that warrants a 7 minute, 6 to 7 minute long running time. And I really think that these songs that I have a problem with, besides Anchor, that are just a little too long, I think could have been fixed if they were cut 3 minutes short and maybe the more boring parts taken out of it. But that's just, of course, my opinion. Some people do kind of like that. And again, I'm not saying that long songs can be bad. As you know, I've liked songs in the past that were 15 minutes in length or even more. I mean, just to name a couple off my head, Tool's Third Eye, Car Seat Headrest had multiple songs that were over 12 minutes long in their last album there. So, uh, Twin Peaks, I believe it's called. I don't know. Is it Twin Peaks? I'm not too sure. I'm going to have to look back at that. But anyways, yeah. So I do like songs that are long. It's just the other songs I like did stuff that made me care for as long. So, but then looking at that, we got those negatives in there. There's a bunch of tracks on here that I do have problems with. There are tracks though on here that I do like a lot, such as the opening 2.5 minute long track Wrinkle. This is a great song for like first time listeners of Thank You Scientists to listen to, because it really does hit all the little things that this group is about. You have your progressive rock elements in it. You have the horns, and then you have the violins that come into it as well. You also hear the more technical side of the drums on parts of this song, and you do get a little bit of metal with it too. So it does a great job melding all their styles into one in a matter of 2.5 minutes. And I think it's a great start off point for people who haven't listened to this group before to get into the group, because then you know exactly what to expect. And because of that, the next song, FXMLDR, it goes along with the same path. It does a nice job showing you what the group's about, has a nice dynamic and technical style. Again, the drums are very technical, so is the guitar work on here. Um, and the saxophone solo on this track is phenomenal. I absolutely love the sound of it on here. Like, these guys definitely know their instruments really, really well, and they play them a hell of a lot better than I thought they would, especially with everything else they're doing. And I think the song is kind of cool because it's about the X-Files too, which I've only seen parts of that show. I actually have never sat down and watched like an entire season and stuff like that, but it's a very interesting show, very interesting idea. So it's pretty cool that they decided to base the song off of that. The next song that I absolutely loved on here was the track Swarm. It's definitely the hardest hitting track on this album. Definitely shows their progressive metal side on this a lot. This is definitely their progressive metal track, I would say, on this album. They really went all out on this. Let's see, yeah, because the metal attitude on this is very vibrant in it, and they perform it very well. But even then, they still find ways to fit the horn solos in here and the guitar solos. In fact, they end up mixing together at one point on this track, which sounds fantastic because they meld very well while they're doing their own things, which end up kind of combining into sounding the same thing. So I thought that was pretty great. And then another track that I really enjoyed in here was Everyday Ghost, which is probably the most diverse track on this album. You have all the elements that I talked about before, but it's ramped up to like 50 from where it was before. It just everything is split up again. You'll get the jazz fusion, you get the progressive metal and the progressive rock and the math rock kind of split up, but then it all comes together and melds very smoothly, very nice. The chorus on this track is simple, probably one of the more simpler ones on here, but I think it actually did the best on conveying emotion. I think it definitely makes the listener feel something when you hear this. His vocals are much better on this track compared to other parts of other songs. So I gotta give that to him as well. Uh, Again, the technicality of this of their math rock side is shown very well on this. Very nicely done, very smooth to the ears still, even though it is technical. And in the end, too, the track also likes to get funky a little bit, which I think is great. I think when you can mix a little funk with some rock, you kind of hit something that's pretty good. So, anyways, that's basically the bulk of what I gotta say about this Terraformer album. Thank You Scientist does have a great style and a great sound to them, but unfortunately, when they don't stick to that style, when they don't continue to use all their elements that they have in their hands and kind of do something that sounds almost half-assed, it really does bring the quality of their albums down. And they did it multiple times in this record. And then they have a few songs that just sound long-winded that could have easily been shorter, and I think have gotten the same message across. Or even like the case of the track Anchor, it was kind of doomed from the beginning. It just really never conveyed anything that made anybody care truly about the track. Now, but I have to say, my overall feeling about this album is positive. It's definitely not in the negative. I do enjoy a decent amount of what's on here. I probably will come back to this album, listen to this stuff I really like. Maybe even everything else will grow on me. But after the few listens I gave to this, I'm kind of left wanting more because I think they did get a little lackluster with some of the music they did on here. And the fact that they're having a hard time making slower songs without necessarily all their aspects of their music showing, it does hurt when they try to put it on an album, especially when their best is definitely when they're the most exciting. Because if they're not acting exciting with their music, with their jazz influences, with everything like that, then it just kind of flops, and it just doesn't really make the listener think of anything or feel anything for the most part. So I guess that's all I gotta say about that. Thank You Scientist, Terraformer. I'm gonna have to give this a 6.5 out of 10 on this album. And that's it for this review. So thank you all so much for watching. One more thing, the next review, no question about that, is gonna be the Freddie Gibbs and Madlib review, Bandana. I've been putting that off. I don't know why, but I was waiting for this album to come out for a while, and it finally has. And I'm definitely gonna do a review on it. Like this was like one of the most awaited albums of 2019 because the last time Freddie Gibbs and Madlib came together, they created the album Pinata, which, from what I've seen, was one of the most adored albums of this decade. So I'm looking forward to checking out both of them because I personally have not checked out Pinata yet, and I probably should. Again, remember, I'm new to these styles of music. I'm still trying to get myself to listen to some of the greatest when it comes to rap or other genres too. So I'm working on that. But anyways, if you enjoyed this video, like, comment, subscribe. Talk about this album in the comments. Did you like it? Did you hate it? Do you think Thank You Scientist does a good job with using their styles and then taking their styles out to make slower tracks? Or do you agree with me with saying that they either should focus more on the slower stuff to make it sound as dynamic as their more up-paced, more versatile music, or should they just stay with their excitingness and just try to keep working off of that instead? You know, just a bunch of things you can discuss about this album there. But besides that, I think I'm done. So thank you all so much for watching, and please have a nice day.